So we will now have time for a question and discussion. So do you have questions for the two first speakers? Anyone?
Thank you, everybody. Corpel, if we want to actually evaluate the resistance on arbovirus vectors, we should not only consider the Aedes, but also consider other mosquitoes. Like Culex, we have so many problems with Japanese encephalitis, with West Nile and other arboviruses. If we want to work on the mosquito-transmitted virus, we should consider other things. I think we missed this one. In addition, you mentioned about the microorganism help the host become resistant to insecticide. This is true. Recently, Wolbachia in the Aedes for preventing of the transmission of dengue. But this Wolbachia help the insect become resistant to insecticide. So any modification of the insect inserting the Wolbachia, we help the insect become resistant. In addition, a lot of detergents we are using for, for washing clothes, washing everything, those ones go to the environment and cause the resistance. Not only insecticide, but also the detergent and any chemicals we are using goes to the environment and goes to the breeding places, cause the resistance to the insecticide. Just the additional.
Yeah, Jean-Philippe could say a word on that. He has published quite a lot of papers on all the xenobiotics that can affect the resistance profile, the detoxification profile, EV metals or different kind of thing like that. So
there's been quite a lot of studies on that, and there's still some ongoing project on that on Anopheles, but very few on Aedes mosquitoes. And all those projects show that the main, of course, the main selection pressure that leads to resistance is coming from vector control. But pesticides and other agrochemicals that are used in agriculture represent a very important selection pressure that has been neglected for years and years. And this is a big problem because most of the insecticides that are used for vector control are coming from the agriculture market. So this means mosquitoes have been probably previously exposed. And this is a big problem for managing resistance in the next decades. And also, those studies have been shown that some pollutants that are present in industrial areas or urban areas can also affect mosquito detoxification systems, leading to tuning metabolic resistance in one way or another, depending on the context. And this could also have an important impact in the selection of insecticide resistance in the field. So all these environmental parameters have been neglected for years, and there has been a clear separation between vector control and environmental management. And this should be put together now in order to improve insecticide resistance management. This is something the WIN network will support strongly.
Other question? Yeah.
It's not a question, but my view on this activities which are being accentuated for doing this work on Aedes aegypti are in general control of the arboviruses. Two things is that, as already told, the discriminated dose determination will be the priority we should have, because the doses that we are working on for determination of resistance or susceptibility in Aedes aegypti or albopictus are not the ones that are specific. The direct relevance which I could do is CDC has done for Aedes and Anopheles also, and we ourselves have done one bottle assistant test where we have found 5 times difference in the diagnostic dose in which was much less in Aedes compared to the Anopheles. This is one aspect. I think, as you said already, the priorities on discriminated doses only. Without that, and the available information, as far as I have seen the literature or in my own country, that it is very sketchy and it is not done properly. It has to be done properly and it has to be mapped nicely. That's one biggest task which we have to do before going into. Third thing, now there is much talk of GMVs also. So the GMVs for the control, so that is for malaria, it may come for this also of little later period. But recently I was hearing one seminar I was attending on CRISPR gene editing. The end point which they said is, if nothing works, we have to kill the mosquitoes with insecticides only. Because something may go wrong, regulators may come and say that stop it and other thing, whatever the release has to be killed. So now the reliance on insecticides is still persistent as far as now it is concerned. So this work should also aim at having effective insecticides in hand in case other strategies have failed or not working properly. Thank you.
For the problem of diagnostic concentration, it has been seen for a long time, actually. It has been a debate for many times. If we do it, it will be in support with the NTD, with the WHO, and will have to be done in really well-recognized institutions. But I think, especially for the WHO collaborating centers, we'll have to be in charge of that. And try to have a quite different, enough population and insecticide to have something consistent. It's not, of course, to change everything, but the problem is that when everybody is using different dosage of things, you cannot do something standard at international level. So I think it's something that we will really work on. I think we can have some support from WHO for that after discussion with Dr. Rahman also. So yeah, we'll work. It's something very important for the country, at least.
Okay, maybe we have time for two more questions.
Thank you. Very, very short, more comment than a question. I'm Cecilia Claes from Aix-Marseille University, and I am a sociologist. And as a sociologist, I would like to thank very much Florence Vauc, we know each other, because she has very well underlined how the social issue is a big issue. Okay, it's a big issue to make the population act properly, to vector control, but I think also that the population point of view about insecticide resistance is a big problem, because what we can see as sociologists on the field is that sometimes people don't do what we ask them to do for mosquito control because they don't know, or they don't want to know, or they don't accept that there is such a problem of insecticide resistances. Okay, some of them don't know, and you just need to ask to tell them what the issue is. But sometimes they think there is, kind of théorie du complot. How would you say that in English? That the government are lying to them because they don't want to spend money to spray the insecticides, so on. So it's not just a comment, but maybe a question. Do you plan, or do you think it could be interesting to have more social science into your network?
No, I think we all agree here that this is a very important component for having worked for many years in Africa with malaria and with mosquito nets or with vector control tools. We all know that if you don't have these components, you can miss your targets because, of course, population will not use. I have not too much experience for insecticide resistance. It's something that we didn't think at the beginning, to be honest, for that. But of course, this is something that we will discuss this week. Of course, it's the aim of it's just a kick-off meeting. So how we could integrate this kind of component for the workshop. I think especially for the workshop, which will be at the restitution. I think important to have this kind of presentation and to have something for stakeholders and people that will be there to have more knowledge on that. So for me, I really think it's important to include. How to include, we don't know, so it will be after some discussion with the groups.
Yes, I agree, and I think you're right. The perception and the use of insecticide by at home is very important, and this has also been identified as a factor for selecting resistance in the field. So we talk about agriculture, pollutant, vector control, but the use of insecticide at home is a main cause of insecticide resistance, especially because insecticides are most of the time not used properly, not the right molecule, not the right dosage, and sometimes they are not efficient, sometimes they are too high dosage or improper molecule. So it's a very important thing to consider. I agree.
Can I? Yes, just add a word that this network has been built responding to a call with specific objectives. So in the beginning, with the amount of money that we had for supporting this network, we didn't plan to include social sciences because we had specific topic. But obviously the social sciences have to be put in at a certain moment. So I'm not sure they can do it in 1 year. And it was not in the mandate. But this is something that they probably will be done in the future in a more integrated way. So what we have, as you've seen, is several initiatives. We have insecticide resistance, we have malaria, we have scaling up of dengue vector control tool by community participation, we have urban health, and at a certain point we have to put all these things together, and maybe the community participation and the social sciences will be coming from another project to build up upon this one. You know, it's I don't want to ask them what is not in the mandate, in a way. Thank you.
I think I would just add a word on this. Cecilia, there's a restitution meeting tomorrow in Marseille, which was specifically based on this. So I think there's opportunity to liaise all this project and to organize it, at least let people know what is going on elsewhere and try to bridge all these projects to strengthen the impact.
Okay, so we have one more question and before the coffee break.
So it is not a question, it's an answer to the previous interesting question the person asked concerning Wolbachia and the new method to control the vectors. I think we all see today that we are late for developing new insecticide and we don't know what to do. And now we know that they are developing new method using GMO and Wolbachia. They use that on the field. And I think we have, they started to use at least for small tries on the field.
Small tries.
And I think we need to do some research on that. And we did in my lab some experiment trying to see if Wolbachia can affect resistance in QLEX. We did not see any difference in resistance, but now it's not natural association with transinfection of vectors with foreign Wolbachia. So that could affect resistance, but also resistance could affect competence for the virus. So this is something we really need to study now before we use that in the field. That was just a comment.
Yes, I just would like to make clear that WHO recommendation for these new technologies have been the purpose of a workshop that was held in March, and the final recommendation. So 5 new tools have been investigated: the genetically modified mosquito, the Wolbachia modified mosquitoes, the seed sterile insect technique, and 2 types of traps: ovi traps and mosquito traps that are lethal traps that are killing also mosquitoes. So from these 5 tools that were advanced enough to be released into the field, only 2 have received not a recommendation of large deployment, no way, but a recommendation of more trials, randomized controlled trials, to prove that these methods are efficient not against the mosquito density, but against the disease. So now what WHO want to know before making any recommendation is these tools have an effect on the disease, on the transmission. So what we have at the moment is trials, small-scale trial. Well, Wolbachia is not so small because in Indonesia and in Colombia they have big trials, I agree. but is not a recommendation of large deployment. And we are waiting to see what's going on from these trials before to take any position. So, I know there is a lot of, I would say, advocacy from the companies to have this tool more and more used and more deploy. But for the moment, we cannot make recommendation because what WHO is looking for is methods that are controlling not the vectors but the disease. And we are trying to control the disease by controlling the vector, but controlling the vector is not enough. So we are just waiting.
Okay, thank you everybody for your attention. The first session is now over.